Let's move to the second topic of our program, which is war of a small chip. The small chips that are used in computers, that are used in mobile phones, used in electronic items, are primarily built. I mean, a big portion of their manufacturing is done in the East, particularly Taiwan and China. This technology is so important that without enough and abundant supply of these computer chips, it is very difficult to continue the production of many electronic items, including our computer gadgets, our mobile phones, and many other things. These semiconductors are now becoming new battlegrounds where countries like United States of America and powerful nations like China are looking eyeball to eyeball towards each other to ensure that the supply of these semiconductors and computer chips do not get completely out of hand. For many in the West, it is believed that the United States want to retain a complete or a partial control on the supplies of semiconductors, while China is trying to ensure that it remains to be the only supplier of these semiconductors, so that the entire manufacturing of information technologies equipment remains in the soft control of Chinese influence. To talk further about it, I have invited a very prestigious guest in my program. His name is Mubashir Sargana. Mubashir is Internet Public Policy Researcher. He's also Vice Chairman, Asia Pacific School on Internet Governance, and is joining me in my studio. Mubashir, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First things first, Mubashir, we don't know much about the use of these semiconductors. Help us to understand what exactly these semiconductors are and why are these so significant for information technology.
Okay, thank you, Shabahat, for inviting me. Starting from its inception in 1960s, like when we used to have bigger semiconductors to process just simple calculations and to store simple data, to this evolution in the era of nanotechnology. We are wearing smart devices that can tell us about our heartbeat. This is the evolution that we are actually having right now. This is all about this evolution of semiconductors and this chip technology.
But these chips are being used perhaps in every electronic gadget that we are using today.
Yeah, definitely. Starting from our own daily use basis devices like IoTs, or we can call it Industrial Revolution 5.0 or 4.0. We are just going for 5.0 now. So we are using these chips in our weapons, automated machines, computer processing units, and everywhere almost.
So wherever there is a computerized machine or a machine that has ability to do tasks smartly, this chip is semiconductors that are part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So going forward, how do you compare this chip technology with the other traditional technologies that were at use before this technology of semiconductor arrived?
There are certain factors like efficiency. That's at the top. Like we used to, if we talk about traditional technologies, there is much processing power, time, and resources required to do certain tasks. But if we come to the semiconductors or nanotechnology, or maybe about the chips, these we are having right now, we can use these to enhance security, capability, and also processing power.
And what role does this play in the development of new technologies further? We are in an era where new technologies are coming. We were just a while ago talking about ChatGPT 2.0 and then ChatGPT 4.0. So the science is still exploring its expansion. How does the use of semiconductors affect us here?
If we talk about the evolution of AI, like if we were discussing ChatGPT just before this segment, this is one of the fundamental components, this chip technology, to support this AI evolution. And if there are any other things like IoTs, or maybe there are other inventions that are coming up, there are many other things. This is one of the core elements that we are going to have, or we're going to need to make it happen, actually.
And do we, at large as a nation, require this supply of such semiconductors to ensure that our infrastructure of information technology remains intact? Because computers are used almost everywhere in the banks and IT sector, perhaps even the coffee shop that we were sitting together a while ago in.
Yeah, exactly. If we are going to have a automated system, like whatever happens in our life is dependent on technology. Like we are moving to that era very soon. Then we should have enough supply of those devices or those semiconductor chips to use them in our inventions, in our products that are going to facilitate us. Facilitate us. Actually.
And what does this technology, I mean, do you see that the use of these semiconductors is going to remain at the heart of all the developments that are about to come? Or are we taking a leap and going away from the use of these semiconductors? And I'm asking you this because the next guest is going to talk about the sensitivity of the subject. The big powers are now fighting about, or they are not in good relationship with each other because of the supply of which is getting scarcer with every day. So are we going to move forward, or are the chips going to sit at the heart of all the technologies that we are going to have in the future?
I can actually say that like the inventions that are being carried out like in this era or in the coming time that are mostly dependent on this chip technology. Like if we talk about artificial intelligence, IoT devices, or if there are any other inventions like if we talk about critical infrastructure even, or automating our government operations or governance systems. So we are going to need that. If we are going to lead in its production or its evaluation, then we are going to have a power and we are going to have a control on our, like in the world. Like if we talk about any nation, like if it's US or China or Taiwan or Japan, maybe they are all competitors.
Let's, ladies and gentlemen, talk with the second guest in this segment. He's Osama Rizvi. Needs no further introduction. Osama, welcome to the show. Osama, we are talking about this semiconductor technology that sits at the heart of development of the entire IT infrastructure that the world is using and is going to use in the future. What will you tell us about the supply and demand of these semiconductors, which is becoming a flashpoint between major powers? Osama, do I have you with me? Ladies and gentlemen, Osama Rizvi is not on the call, and our team is going to take him on the call again. Talking again about the IT infrastructure that we have been using so far and as we have used as yet. So you were telling us that we are not going to get out of the use of these semiconductors and we are going to need this. So how does this all infrastructure depending on one semiconductor field when these semiconductors are not in supply? What happens actually? Does that get into a shortage of manufacturing, or what happens exactly?
It's just because of it's something very sensitive, like it's called the core of the technology. So when a specific government is controlling the production, like production and also supply of these devices, like they can control the evolution and the development. If we talk about China or US, both are actually at the like a tug of war, like between these both countries. So if we talk about Intel, that is producing semiconductors, or if we talk about recent like policies of Biden, like last year in August they signed an agreement, Chips and Science Act, more than 50 billion of grant for industry to support the industry of this semiconductor production. And also the restrictions that were followed by this act back in October last year. These restrictions were mainly to supply these products to China, just because they shouldn't have access to these produced devices that were being.
So Mubashir, what I comprehend from your conversation is that if these semiconductors are so significant for development of all these machines that are so important in this modern era, this means that in the future there is going to be a price hike if the tug of war between the two powers remain as it has remained so far.
Yeah, there will be tensions actually. Because if we talk about this Huawei incident, like when the US government back in 2020 uh, came up with the sanctions on Huawei uh, to supply its products to US and other countries, uh, that can raise tensions between countries and also with their allies, that the sporting nations. Like if we talk about our own country, Pakistan, we are friends with both countries. Like we are dependent on technology from both these countries.
Let's talk to Osama Rizvi, who has joined us back over the phone. Osama, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Osama, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
Right. Osama, we are talking about the supply chain crisis with regards to these semiconductors that our technology expert was telling us sit at the heart of entire manufacturing of hardwares that we require in this smarter world that we have created. Tell us about the supply and demand gap and the tug of war that is taking place between the two powerful nations.
Yes. So this is very interesting, and especially after COVID-19, the supply and demand dynamics of the whole semiconductor industry, microchips, that has gone a little bit skewed. Why? Because during COVID-19, there weren't enough demand for cars. So, for instance, an average car has around 1,400 semiconductors in it. So that was there, no machinery, no computers. So that really skewed up the demand. There was shortage of workers, there was supply chain congestion. But now, after COVID, the demand has surged all of a sudden. However, uh, the supply has not been able to be met. Russia, and most people don't know this actually. So, Russia and Ukraine, besides playing a very important role in global agriculture and oil and gas, they have a huge role to play in the semiconductor field as well. So, for instance, Ukraine produces neon. Two companies in Ukraine, they produces about half of the world's neon, which is used in these semiconductors in its layering and other things. So that is not, naturally supply chain. There is a war going on. That is being affected. Russia produces palladium, which in turn is used in automobiles. And the recent global economic crisis, the recession, for instance, even in Pakistan, car sales have dropped about 65% year. So that has reduced the demand of from the automakers, and that has also sort of skewed the whole supply and demand dynamic. So what I mean to say is that there's a lot going on around the world. About 10% of semiconductors are produced by the United States of America. 65 to 67% are produced in Taiwan, and most of that just one company, that is TSMC, Taiwan supplies a semiconductor manufacturing company. So that is how highly
Osama,
asymmetrical
Osama, I'm
the
sorry to
relationship
cut
is.
you here, but you have just brought the conversation to my next point, and
Yeah.
which is why does Taiwan have 65% of the net production in the world? There should be a logical reason behind it, because if this technology was so imminent and so significant for the development of entire information technology industry, then why not the West have control on the same? Why don't they have a proportion in production of this very expensive chip?
Yeah, for that we need to understand, first of all, if you allow me, what the semiconductor industry looks like. As in, it's a very, very specific, very sophisticated sort of industry. So there are highly complex processes, precision, even the factory equipment, the cleaning environment, even a single speck of dust that is not visible to the human eye can destroy the whole production. So there are a lot of things going on. It takes around 3 months to engrave, that silicon wafers into semiconductors and whatnot. So you require a lot of technological know-how. You require a lot of skilled workforce, infrastructure, and also government support. Now, we don't have the time to go into the detail, but Taiwan has all of these things. It has government support since 1980s. It has a very skilled workforce. The infrastructure there is very supportive to this, especially power grid, telecommunication systems, the transportation networks, and also Taiwan's proximity to the key markets, which are China, which is Japan, which is South Korea. So China also controls a lot of rare earth elements, which is a very important raw material for semiconductors. So that is why, that are some of the reasons that you can just, that I can just recall off the cuff, that this is why the concentration is in Taiwan and not any other country. But
Osama, but
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 US has recently gotten very aware of this flaw, and they have just announced chips. That's an act that allocates about 52 billion rupees to
But
build.
Osama, I'll have to stop you here
Okay.
because this is a very interesting point that you have brought in this conversation. I mean, regardless of all the efficiencies that Taiwanese industry has, you just told us that United States has not been able to foresee the
Yeah.
significance that this technology carries, and then its concentration entirely in Taiwan creates a dependency on Taiwan for the rest of the world. Something
Yep.
perhaps that United States has completely missed out during their strategic planning.
Absolutely. In fact, this isn't a surprise, but recently the United States Geological Survey, GS, they have categorized the rare earth elements, which I'm repeating again, are a very important raw material for semiconductors, as strategic. So, US has now recently woken up to the idea that as the modern economy depends upon these chips, microchips, they cannot really afford such a high concentration in a country that is surrounded by their, hostile, in a hostile environment, so to speak. So, but as I'm telling you, US is now stepping up its game. There are companies, there are initiatives, there is funding going on, and they have now realized a little late, but I think in the future you will see this concentration breaking down.
Sama, allow me to bring my guest in the studio back in conversation. Would you want to add anything here, Mubashir?
Yeah, I think there are two major factors that actually have a major impact on these issues and challenges that if we talk about China, Taiwan, and US, like cheap labor and government policies in terms of incentive in taxes or relaxations. If we talk about US government, they are not they are investing a lot of money. Like if I talk about, I just shared that $50 billion investment to promote chip production over there, but they are not supporting investors and also the industry over there by coming up with the relaxation in tax policies. But Taiwan is having all these things: cheap labor, relaxation, and incentive in tax policies. And China is definitely is supported by the government.
All right. Osama, coming back to you. So, do you think that all of this together becoming a huge advantage for People Republic of China is going to be an advantage with them for times to come? Because you were telling us a while ago that United States has later realized it's behind in the game and has started coming back into it, has started doing something to bring back itself into the main play. So, do you believe China is going to keep this advantage over a period of time?
Yes, certainly I do believe that. However, as I just said, the concentration would start to break down a little bit. But you see, China controls 84% of the supply chain of rare earth elements. During the trade war, uh, if you remember, this was being termed as China's nuclear option. That if they decide to stop the supply of rare earth elements, REEs, that would literally just blow everything up. So China does not only have this semiconductor advantage, they have this rare earth element advantage. And I believe even in the diplomatic front, you've seen China has brokered the deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and all of those things are happening. So yes, I expect China to, play a major role, but at the same time, we should expect, or we should be expecting a trade war, a recurrence of the trade war. It has been going on in the background behind closed doors. Recently, 26 companies were banned. Many countries were scolded, actually. Pakistan was one of them for dealing with those companies, Pakistan and other Arabian countries. So we see, I've always been saying that trade war remains a tail risk. And I believe, unfortunately, in this year, 2023, before it ends, we will see another round of trade war, a proper round of trade war between US and China.
Thank you very much, Osama Rizvi, for enlightening us with your wonderful thoughts once again. Your closing comments on this entire conversation, Mubashir.
I think there should be some friendly relation and bilateral relation between these two countries, China and US, because the countries like Pakistan are dependent on we are development countries, and we should have uh, access to these technologies.
For the greater good of the entire industry in the world. It's
Exactly.
important that the two sides come
Yeah.
together. Thank you very much, Mubashir,
Thank
for
you so
being guest
much.
in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard from our guests, this chips or semiconductors have become a very important, rather a pivotal point in today's trade war, which is taking place between United States and its allies, which becomes actually the entire West and China. As Osama was telling you, in last year, August, $52.5 billion have been allocated by US government for development of chips technology in the United States, as US has realized it's far behind in the game. Netherlands and many other countries are imposing bans on export of such material to the East, which includes China and Taiwan, whereas countries like Korea and Japan are trying to catch up into the game. That said, all of this will continue unless the two powers do not decide to sit down together for the greater good of human beings. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.